Hello, everyone. This is Michael Lee from Xray talking to you today. Today, we are going to be talking about about Xray Cloud and how it's integrated with Jira and going through the basic features of that software. So normally we would do introductions at this point, but I'm going to jump right in here because we are on a limited time basis, 45 minutes. We want to make sure we get to everything. We do have a moderator who is Cristiano. He is monitoring the questions, so as they come in, he'll be taking care of those. So please feel free to submit those questions. We will make sure to get those answered. Just to jump right in, Xray, this is going to be our agenda for today, just so you see what we're going to be talking about. We're going to go in a little bit the basics of Xray, what it is, the concepts behind it. We're going to be primarily talking about the software here. We can go into more detail offline if you want to find out more about Xray, the background of Xray as a company and our team. But we're going to go straight into the software today. So we're going to talk into the concepts behind Xray as a test management solution, how we help you organize and how it's organized and how it is documented, and show you what we provide you there. Then we're going to go through how you specify test cases using Xray, both test cases and their preconditions, how you specify those. Once we have created those test cases, we will show you how we help you organize those test cases and how we help you complete those executions. We'll be doing that, helping you with test sets, test plans, and test executions. And then we also have you see their test repository and test runs. So we'll go through all of that once we get into the software. And then the last bullet you see there is the reporting and gadgets, because we do have a full suite of pre-built reports, as well as a custom report generator and a dashboard with gadgets that are available. So what is Xray? Xray is a test management app for Jira. We do have a version for cloud, server, and data center. We are going to be focused on the cloud version today. Within Jira and using Xray, you do have test coverage visibility. We'll show you what that looks like. Through our reporting, you do get traceability of all the tests, the test histories, the executions, the test run data, etc. We do support both automated and manual tests. We'll show you how that works through the sample tests we have. We help you organize and plan those tests through things like the test sets, test repository, test plans. You can execute tests inside of Xray. There is an asterisk there next to that bullet because manual tests can be executed directly from within the software. But automated tests are still executed by your automated framework if you're using that to complete your automated tests. And then once those automated frameworks have completed those tests using our REST API that's also listed there, and those integrations that I'll show you that are available, those automated test results would then be pushed into Xray for recording and reporting purposes. When you're in Xray, you can report bugs, and we will show you how that looks as well. When you download Xray, if you're in Jira Cloud, you have your administrator download Xray, install it into your cloud instance. A number of new Jira issue types are going to become available. We'll show you what that UI looks like in a few moments when I get into the software itself. But briefly, we have the test cases and the test and the preconditions that are associated with them. We have test sets. You can have as many of those as you want. Test sets are just simple groupings of tests. You can add them to as many. You can have them as many as you want. And you have test repository, which is a per project repository. So each project has one and only one test repository, and that's just for finding tests. You link your test into the repository, so when you're looking for a specific test, you can go find it. Once you have them in those test sets and repositories, you also have test plans. I'll show you how what that looks like, and how the test plans are utilized. And then we have test executions and subtest executions. The little annotation of test run underneath there is because inside of Xray, a test execution is required, because when you execute a test, you need some, and you have test run data, you need to have some place to store that data, and that's in the test execution. Now, typically, most of our customers are using the Agile development environment process, and if we're requirements are stored within their epics and their stories. And that's usually where we are mapping tests. That is not the only place you can map tests. You can map a test to any Jira issue type. That is done through the configuration of Xray. When you set it up, you can say where you want to have those tests mapped. Now, because we are a Jira app, you do get a number of features, all the features that are already available in Jira. Some of them are more important than others. And I shouldn't say more important. Some of them are more mandatory than others in that things like permission controls, implementation of workflows, assignments, and change tracking, all of that is done utilizing the normal Jira administration capabilities. We at Xray do not implement a separate set of permission controls. We don't implement a new workflow system or manage the assignments. All of that is done using your normal Jira administration controls. So if you want to build a workflow that includes a test plan, you build a Jira workflow, you include the Xray test plan, and then you use that same assignment feature inside Jira to assign that test plan activity. If you want to assign that as an activity to a user, that's done using your normal process. You can customize fields and screens. What I'm going to show you today is what it looks like just by default. You can add more fields if you want to see more. You can customize the screens. If you want to see more data, you can add custom fields to that. We do have, because of the reporting, custom fields are not reported on, so we'll go into that, what that means a little later. But you can also use the collaboration and third-party apps that are included in Jira as well. All right. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about, as I mentioned, is test case specifications, how we build tests, how we put them together. All right, so I was asked to move my microphone a little farther away. Sorry about that. So when you are we're going to go look at our demo environment here first, what we're going to look at today. So we have a story, and it's a user managing a shopping cart. We're going to have 3 sample tests. There are 3 test types in Xray, and one of each of those is displayed there. We have a manual test type, a BDD test type, which is a cucumber-based behavioral test, and then we have the third type, which is generic. Generic test type is a catch-all test type that is designed to handle all automated tests that are being brought into Xray. So if you're integrating with whatever framework, and you're going to, at the end of that, those automated test results, and you're going to push those test results into Xray. Xray is going to recognize those as an automated test, and then it will set them as test type generic. The last thing on this screen you'll see is the precondition. The precondition is in this case, is going to be associated with a manual test. Preconditions like tests are linked. So that precondition, once it's created, can be linked to any test that needs to have that precondition associated with it. Likewise, with these tests you see here, they are linked to this story. They are not owned by the story or possessed by the story, so they can be reused wherever needed. That is not limited to the project where they're created. They can be utilized across projects. And we'll show you how that works when we get into the actual software, which is where we're going now. So if you're familiar with Jira Cloud, this should look fairly similar to what you've seen before. It's just your standard Jira sprint board. What we're going to be looking at today is this demo story number 1 here in the middle, this NDS1. I've opened it up in detail here so you can see what it looks like. Close that window. So most of this should look fairly familiar to you as a Jira user. Some of the things that have been added to this because of Xray being installed is you have this test coverage section. Under the link issue, you have the ability to, and there is is tested by option. Now, when you want to add tests, you have this test coverage here. I have one test in here added that's already been passed just for you to see what it looks like. Now I'm going to add a few more tests. So you can add tests here. You can either create a new test or you can add existing tests. Or you can add test sets, which we'll go into, excuse me, we'll go into test sets here momentarily when we go into organization. But I'm going to add some existing tests to this environment, to this story, excuse me. So I'm going to add this one and this and this. So we have, these are the 3 tests. These represent the 3 tests that I showed you in that slide. So we have the manual test, the pre-created BDD test, and the third test, which is a automated test. And I have each one of these open here so we can go and look like. So if I hit select, create new test from scratch, and I say create manual test, because you'll see there's only 3 test types available from this drop down. I'm going to get this grid. It's going to be a grid that looks just like this. Obviously, it would just be blank. And you'll type in your steps. What is the user's action? This is for a manual test. the user's action, what is the data required to complete this test, and then the expected result. If you wanted to add data in this section, this may be a screenshot or a video that tell this person what they should be doing. You can do that as well. But if we start here at the top and come down through this test, jumping back up a little bit, we'll see we have the test detail screen, which is what brings us to this grid. Then we have the precondition tab. I'm talking very quickly today. We have this precondition tab where you'll see we have this NDS 11, which is the precondition I mentioned previously, that the user must be logged in. It's been linked to this test. We have the test sets tab, and we'll see any test sets this thing is been associated with, which is a part of a demo test set 1. Test plans, you'll see the screen looks a little different here because test plan also has a test status. It shows you what's been going on with this test. When I highlight over, it tells me what the status is of overall this test plan. And you'll see it is a member of that one plan. It has 10 tests in it. And then finally, on this tab, we have the test runs. Test run tab is where all previous test executions of this test are stored, as well as their associated test run data. You'll see here's the ones before. We have 2 of them that have yet to been run, 2 of them that have failed, but it's also from within here. You can go, I can jump in here and go in and actually see the actual data that's inside this test run, which we will do when we go through the execution phase. I just should have mentioned here, you probably noticed this at the top here. This red symbol means it's the bug. This is a bug that was created when this test was executed previously. So whenever a bug is created, when you create a bug manually through execution of a test, it is automatically linked to the test where it was created, which is what has happened here. All right. So the next one will be our test 2, which is our BDD, our cucumber test. When you come in, you hit create test, you come in and say, I want to create a cucumber test. You're going to get this empty scenario here where I've added the language, which is your standard Gherkin language. It says, given this, and when I do that, when I do this, I get this. Them. So it's given and when then. I've added that language myself. We've added these set of example numbers to the screen, to the scenario, excuse me. So when this test is executed, it will run these samples against these rules and make sure that it's right. Again, we have the standard fields here, preconditions, test sets, test plans, and as in the other one, we have our test run data. So you'll see here, these are the previous test runs, examples, executions that were taking place by this test. Slow down. So, and the last test we're going to show you here is the automated test. The automated test is not created by hand inside of Xray in this case. When you create a integration with your automated framework with Xray, when that automated framework executes that test and it pushes those test results back to Xray, the first thing Xray will do is look for a test definition name. In this case, it's a concatenation of the name and what the test does. And it says, does a test exist inside of Xray with this test definition name? If it does not find that definition, it will create the test for you the first time. After that, subsequent executions of that test will result in that execution data being appended to this test. Because it will come back in, it'll say, yes, I've already created this test. Here's the test with that definition. As you can see, it will append that execution data to that test. And I need to open that up while I'm thinking about it, is because what I'm using today when I go through that is my Jenkins is what I'm using for my automated test. So when I execute this automated robot test, is what I'm going to use today. It's going to update this execution page. And with that, we're going to jump back here. So now we've created these 3 tests. We have the automated test, the BDD Gherkin cucumber test. We have the manual test, and they're all in there. They're all linked to the story. But now we're like, well, how do we organize and then execute these tests, which is where we're going next. So we have a number of ways we help you do that. This is kind of what I was just talking through. I didn't change the slide. So we write the test. Now we're going to go through the organization part, where we're going to use test sets and test repositories to organize those basic tests. Then we'll put them into a test plan. Once we have those test plans, then we can create the test executions and complete those executions. And then we can record and show you the reports based on those execution data. two primary ways we do basic execution and organization of tests inside of Xray is through test sets and test repositories. Now, I've mentioned before, you can have as many test sets as you want. A test set is just a group of tests. If you have a group of 3, 4, 5 tests, they are always used to test a certain component or a certain piece of the UI or some other portion of the software. You can group them together and just say, I always need to use these as test set A. That way you do not have to go and grab those tests individually whenever you want to add them to a test plan or add them to a test execution. Conversely, the test repository, there's only one per project. Each test only exists in one node in that repository. As you can see from the picture here, and I'll show you more about that, what that looks like in the software. It is hierarchical based. It is a folder based system. The little picture here, you have a number of databases and their versions, and the tests related to those databases and those versions inside of there. Those tests will be located in one place. So when you want to come find your tests, you can drill down through those folders and find them. You can also filter, which I stepped over a little bit already. I need to go back through. In each place where we have lists of tests, whether that's on the stories or the executions or what we're looking at here, which is like the repository, you can filter on those, and I'll show you what that looks like. So you can, if you have a very large repository with thousands of tests, you can filter on those and find the tests you're looking for. So as we're getting ready to bring this all together, you'll see on the outside we have Jira. Jira is what stores all your requirements. You have your epics with your stories underneath them. You have your one-off custom issues you may have developed. Inside of that, you have Xray. Inside of Xray, you have defined all of your tests. Once you've defined those individual tests, you've linked them to either an epic, a story, or a custom issue. Now you're going to say, I'm going to put these all in this project's repository because they're all part of this individual project. They're going to go into this repository so I can find them easily. Now to manage them better, I'm going to create this test set. These 3 tests always go together. So I'm going to put them together in a test set. Then when I say I need to build a test plan, say, well, I'm going to take test 1, test set A, and test 9, and I'm going to put them into a test plan. When I take test set A and put it into the test plan, it's going to just add those 3 tests for me automatically. I have some questions. Let's see. We'll stop here. Does the test explain to the tester why it failed to creating or filing bugs? So I will show you exactly that question when we go into the manual test in just a moment. I will take a look at that, and we will go into that when I'm executing the test. And migration is something I will. We can go to it a little bit if we get to at the end of the presentation. Otherwise, it is something we can go through offline. We do have a full set of migration tools available, and our support team can help you with all the migrations. Back to the slide there, we have test plans. Once we have added the test to a test plan, then we have to build test executions. We should note test plans are not required; they're not mandatory. Most people and most of our customers, especially with large, complex testing environments, do make use of test plans. They're a valuable part of the process, but they're not mandatory. Test executions, on the other hand, are mandatory because you have to have a test execution to complete and to execute the test and to store the data when it's done. Because when you've completed that test execution, you're going to have test run data, and that test run data is stored with that execution. Now, I mentioned frameworks previously. I'm using Jenkins, and we have a very large, well-built framework that's a REST API that's available to all of our customers. There is no charge for that. We have a long list of integrations that are pre-built. That are just you download the plugin, and our team will help you set up that plugin connected with your Xray, with your individual Xray environment. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is Xray takes in either an XML report or a JSON report. And it can originate in any one of the frameworks you see there. If a framework you are using is not on this list, you have full access to the REST API, and you can build that connection anytime you want. There's no charge for that. And now we'll go back into the software. So when you're in Xray Cloud, in Jira Cloud, to get to the basic, all of the Xray functionality, you'll see my mouse is over here on the right side. You have the testing board. When you open the testing board, it's going to bring you to the test repository. Now, if you want to find more information, it's under the testing board. Here's all the stuff we're going to go, the rest of the things we're going to talk about today. This is where you find it all. So we have the test repository, as I mentioned. There's one per project. So you see this is a test project. This is the test repository for project new drone store. I have my 3 tests that I'm looking at are added to this repository under folder demo. I only have 11 tests in this repository because it is a demo environment. We have customers with thousands, tens of thousands of tests in these repositories. Then that's where the filtering comes in. Then I mentioned you can filter on any of these fields that help to define your tests. So if you have priority, status, fixed version, your tests, if you have test sets, what it's covering, any of this information you can filter on. You can also make use of the Jira query language. So if you have Jira filters already built or you want to make use of them in the future, you can add those filters. I mentioned in an earlier slide that you can add custom fields to Xray. We have people who want to add custom fields for definition of their tests. You can add custom fields. They are not reportable on. They are not filterable on based on these fields because we don't filter on somebody else's custom fields. But you can filter on them using a Jira query. So if you build your own Jira filter and it includes that, and you need to because you have custom fields, then we can help you with that. So once you have your tests in here, they're in this repository, and you say, well, I want to add these to it. I want to create a test plan. You highlight the tests you're interested in adding to a test plan. You right click on those tests. You see the little drop down. You can add to an existing test set, plan, or execution, or you can create your brand new test set, test plan, or test execution. You can do that right from this screen. In this case, I've already added these to a test plan, so I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go into my test plans under that hamburger menu. You'll see here's my test plan for the shopping cart. And then I have folder built underneath here where I have my my individual tests for this part of the test plan. So you can break down your test plan inside of there by folders. Here's my 3 tests that I'm looking at today. They've already, and you see the difference between the repository and the test plan is the test plan, it tracks status. Again, it's filterable. It uses, in this case, I'm looking at my environments. You define the environments. In my test environment here, I have the environment set up as either Chrome or Firefox. You can define an environment to mean whatever you want it to mean. If that means the operating system, then you can base it on the operating system. You can also filter on other information inside of here, you can filter on other information inside of here just like you can in the repository. So if you need to go find specific tests inside of here. So now I have my tests, they're in a test plan, and I say, well, I need to execute these tests. As I mentioned, you have to have a test execution before you can execute a test. So I'm going to come to my manual test, right click on it. I'm going to say create a test execution with tests, which is just this one test. So this is man test over 5. So we're going to have this manual test I'm going to run right now. I'm only adding one test to this test execution. There is a way to import tests, and I will show you, and we can show you how to do that offline. There is a way to import tests. We have a test case importer, which hopefully I'll have time to show you guys at the end. So we do have, when you create a test execution, you're going to see it's by default, it's going to get created in the project I'm in. It's going to be a test execution. I've named it. That is the only mandatory information you have to have. But if you want to, if you need to lock down this execution with more information so it's more well-defined, you can add a fixed version. You can assign it to somebody. You can add labels or link it to a specific story or epic. Now I'm going to create this. I'm going to open it up over here. What's this test question? Can you mention test runs to be created per project? So I just had to see a question as this is loading. I can answer it quickly. Is it test repositories are per project? We do support and have people who use a global test repository where they have a project inside their Jira instance that contains all their tests. Tests are housed in a single repository, but they are not limited to use in a single repository. They can be used across projects. So how you want to do it's up to you guys. That is something you can have a longer conversation with our team offline and decide which approach is best for your environment, for your process. But we do support both ways that were described. So here's our test execution. you'll see that we have the status, to-do status. It has, because this test execution has not been completed yet. There is only one test in this execution. You can have dozens or hundreds of tests in here if you need be. And again, you can filter on these. This is a manual test. So for me to complete this test, I just going to hit the play button. It's going to open up a test execution screen for my user. Now, this comes back to the question somebody asked earlier about that. All the information the user is going to get on how to execute this test is going to be on this screen. So if you needed to add more information, then that would be on this screen. In this case, I am going to create a bug you'll see momentarily, but that is done because I witnessed it and I've decided that a bug is created. So how you do that process defined by you is defined by you and your QA team. On the starting at the top, we have the test execution screen. So we have number of statuses out of the box. We have 4. We have to do, which is the gray. We have pass, executing, and fail. You can add more if you like. You can add as many statuses as you need to fit your workflow. These are just the 4 that come out of the box. There are no findings at this point because they are there after the execution is completed. But then you'll see here's our other basic information. This tests is what the test is, that it's test. The thing that it is testing is a story, which is NDS1. Excuse me, couldn't get that to come out right. We have a precondition, NDS 11, that says the user must be logged in. We've had people ask about how this is enforced, and it is not. It is telling the user that they're supposed to be logged in. That we don't programmatically force somebody to do something like that. That's not. It's just something informational only. So then we have our steps. So we're going to be here at our first step, which is it's going to tell the user, once you're logged in, navigate to the main drone store page and go to the top 10 list. And do you see the top 10 drone list? And if I say, yes, I do, then I hit passed and this step turns green. And now I passed that step. And you'll see at the top here, the test is now entered the execution stage status. It's going to remain in that execution status until I either fail or pass this test. This tests are all or nothing. So all steps must be passed for the test to pass. And if any one step fails, then the entire test fails. So I'm going to come here to step 2. I'm going to select one of these drones. And when I do that, a dialog should pop up that says add to cart. Now I'm going to say, well, for some reason that this did not happen. When I say that the cart window did not appear when I selected that drone of my liking for some reason. So because it did not appear, I'm going to say that was a bug. That is a defect. So I'm going to log this defect. I'm going to say, there it is. Add to cart window did not appear. Some information is added to this bug by default. So you'll see that this is the information about where I'm at, what step I'm in, and where I'm at in this test. Then you can add more specific information for Q&A purposes if you need to. You can add more environmental information. You can add screens. You can add more attachments or evidence. You can also say this is which issue this is blocking. You can put this very specific information. And by default, it is set up. It's being linked to the sprint that I'm in. Now this NDS 73 has been added, and it's been linked to this test. I'm going to add some evidence and say, well, I also have a screenshot that proves that this did not happen. So I'm just going to go here and say, open this up. And it's going to add that. And now I have this. So I have added a comment, added the defect, added some evidence. Now you'll see that I'm still in the to-do state on this test. That's because it is possible to create a bug that may or may not have anything to do with the test step that I'm executing. If I'm looking at this UI on this web store and I notice that there's a problem, there's a font problem or some other text is missing somewhere else on the screen that has absolutely nothing to do with this individual step, I can still record that bug for Q&A purposes and make sure it gets logged into the system. So that would not necessarily fail this step. So even when you find a bug completing a step, you are still required as the user to go in here and fail that step. Now, when I fail a step, as I mentioned, tests are all or nothing. So since I failed this step, the entire test is failed. It is also a terminating state. So when I fail a test, I fail a step, it fails the test, and it also terminates the step. So it terminates the test, excuse me. So at that point, this test is over. So when I come here, I'm back to test 8, 15 minutes left. So we are now at test 8. You'll see here's the bug that I recorded. It's been linked to this test. And if I keep this thing to come back to the test run data, you'll see here's my test run that I just completed. And if I click on this, it would take me back to that screen, which is the detail screen I just looked at. It's going to show me what the results are. You'll see here's my findings. Here's what happened because I completed that test. I found a defect on step 2, and I added some evidence. Now, all right, the next test we're going to look at for execution is the cucumber test. The cucumber test is a little different because I am editing and creating this test inside of Xray. So when Jenkins, which is my framework that I'm using, it goes to execute this test. It's configured for Jenkins to query Xray, say, pull this cucumber test and its associated feature file that has the scenario information in it. Once it has that feature file, it will execute this scenario. After it executes the test, it will then push those results back into Xray, and then I'll be able to see those results. So I'm going to come here, I'll go to my Jenkins and Cloud Rope. Nope, wrong one. I went to Cucumber. So here I am on my Cucumber, and I'm going to build this test. And I'm going to open this up here while this is running. So while that is executing, I'm going to come down here and show you what is happening. I have a filter built. This filter says, go into this project and look for cucumber tests. That's what this filter 10003 says. Inside of this Jira instance, look for cucumber tests. Pull their feature files from this path. Execute those cucumber tests using these commands, and then push those test results back into Xray, back into this Xray instance using the cucumber JSON file format. Take that test data, put it back into a test where the project is named the NDS, where it has a fixed version number 1, and it's under in test plan NDS 5. So that's how it's going to find that test that it knows where to put things. If the test finds a bug, and blocks the Jira ticket, does it move the story into block custom up? I will come back to that one. So where was it before I lose my place? So we have the execute. So we've come back over here, and it is still running. There it is. Now it's completed. So I want to finish this before I lose my place, before I can jump into that question. So when I come here onto this page, you'll see now that I just ran this test. Here's this NDS 74. I just executed this cucumber test just now. And if I click this little link here, it's going to take me to this execution screen. And you'll see here's the execution screen for a cucumber test. It's linked to this story. Here's my scenario, and here's my output. So it's going to give me actually the metrics, how long it took me to complete each one of these steps, and the status. Now, this is the basic information because this is for a demo. So I'm just putting the basic information from this cucumber test in there. You can add more information to your test results. If you have more information available that you want to add, and for recording purposes, reporting purposes, you can do that as well. REST API, we first query. Test plan, before you create a test execution, we first query for the test plan, retrieve the fixed version, requires a regular update to the test plan key. Can you go to best practice is something we can talk about. I see what you're saying about needing to query for the test plan to make sure you do the correct fixed version. That is how that's maintained. That is something we can talk about. It's beyond just a simple 5-second answer. Is approve or answer questions in Hub. Am I allowed to? Oh, that's something else. So, and then the last test we have here is a robot test. A robot test, as I mentioned, is created by the robot, by Jenkins in this case, because that's my automated framework when it runs this test, and then the test data is appended down here. And that's where I'm going to do next here is we have the robot test. and build. And then while that's building, what it's doing right now is it's running Selenium. It's going to, oh, and there it is. So it's opening up, there's Selenium's opening the browser. It's checking for a link, and then it's closing it out. And then it's going to save its history and tell me what happened. Now, just like the other one, this is my robot test. Just like while this does not query for the feature file because this is purely just run by Jenkins, it does have, it tells it where to get the information, where to get this robot test. Excuse me, I'm scrolling too quickly. And then once it gets the robot test, it says just run robot as the command. Then it tells me where to put this information. It says output this information in robot XML format, put it into this XML file, and then again, put it into a test under this project key, under this test plan name using this build number. And you'll see when I come here and I come down to this page, it's going to have it failed because the link that I'm looking for in Xray is no longer there. So I'm going to jump in here to show you what this looks like. So again, comments page should have contained the link, but it did not. So I did not tell it to create a bug. When it found that, it did comment on it and tell me that that was the problem. Then you'll see you come down here, it tells me actual steps that took place during this automated test. So it tells me and open up the browser, went to this URL, should be this. Yes, that should be this title. Yes, it was. It should have this link. It did not. So as you can see, we've gone through, we've specified some test cases, we organized them, we put them in the repository, we have the test plans, test executions. We've run those tests, and now we have some data we need to report on, which is what we're going to look at next. So I'm going to come here. Oh, this is where I wanted to be right here. So we're on the testing board. We're going to come down here and we see we have a number of pre-built tests. Pre-built reports. I'm going to look at the traceability report. Again, you can filter because these traceability reports, as you can imagine, very large, complex testing environments can get very cumbersome. So you can filter this report down based on exactly what you want to look inside of that, either in that project, a certain status, a certain sprint, a certain build. Because this is just a demo environment, I'm just going to run a global traceability report. And I still have to make it expand more. Then I'm going to scroll down here until I get to our demo environment, demo for today, which is NDS 1. You'll see we have our story. It shows its latest status. We have NDS 8, which is our manual test, which it has failed. And then you'll see the execution data. For Cucumber and generic, can the test execution in Jenkins be triggered by Jira? Or do the triggers? Currently, we do not trigger Cucumber and automated tests from within Xray. That is something that has to be done by the automated framework. We don't have a connection that goes that direction currently. So saying you have your traceability, it starts with your story, goes to your test, has your test executions, and then it has your related bugs. I'll go back here. So we have a number of other pre-built reports, test plan metrics, test coverage. You have these lists you can run off of, which just show your basic lists of here's all my executions. So if you need to go and find all your executions, this is not filtered at all, so it's just showing all my execution data. And if I needed to filter that on any of this information, I can as well. Now the other thing we do have, which is called our, there it is, document generator. Now it's because I'm looking at a sprint screen, I can't see anything. If I go into, but what I've, go back into this, not that. If I go here, and open up this test plan on another page because I want to see the detail of it, because I want to show you what I mean by here. The other thing we have for reporting is the document generator, which is right here. You'll see we have Xray document generator. And what I've done already is I've opened up a couple of these a couple of these sample reports. So just based off that NDS 5, demo plan 1, here's what a sample report would look like. This is a out of the box what the report looks like with no customization. These reports are template based. All the templates are freely available for download from Xray. When you get those templates downloaded, you can customize them however you need to fit your requirements. You can have these reports contain as much or as little information as you want, and they can be, as comprehensive as that test plan, overall global report down to an individual test report. This again is an entire history of this test. So these are all customizable. They are free. Document Generator is a pared down version of our actual exporter product. So it is available for exporting all the information you need to for if you need to build custom reports. There have been questions previously about automated that. Currently, it is just a generator. So it will generate those reports, and you can export them however you like. But we do not have an automated emailing tool for that yet. On-prem installation, Xray, any features demonstrated they're not necessarily different. So the on-prem versus cloud. This is cloud. On-prem has a few more things currently. There are a few differences that are primarily cosmetic, but if there are differences in between on-prem and cloud, it would be things like the Jira query language. There are certain things you can do with JQL on-prem. There are things you can do with on-prem that are not quite there yet with cloud. It's not the other way around. But they are not, the differences between cloud and server or cloud and data center are minimal, especially when it comes to basic functionality as far as creating tests, organizing tests, and executing tests. We are down to about 4 minutes. I talked quick and I still ran out of time. So I'm scrolling here to make sure I didn't see if there's any other questions I can answer. Can the test behavior be triggered by Jira? No, we do not execute automated tests at this point. Next question for those with on-prem. Nope. For calculation requirement coverage, we'd like to exclude all requirements that have been withdrawn. Is there a way to define a filter to apply to projects that are denied? Well, by withdrawn, so that would be something you'd have to talk to our support team on best practice and how you define where the requirement is. If it's in a story and it's a requirement associated with that story, then how to exclude that. That would be a good question. That would be a question that I'm going to take these offline. So you can customize, you can go through the process of creating a different test type. That is obviously a more advanced feature. Because it's not, we only support these 3 types. It's what all of our reporting supports. So reporting, filtering, sorting, all that information is based on our three types. And sometimes in the cases where I've seen where people have wanted to create an additional test type, there was a belief that they needed to have a separate test type for their automated framework. Our generic test type is designed to be able to be all encompassing for all of those different automated frameworks. Visual Studio automation test. It has the REST API. So if you're using Selenium and you have the REST API and you want to connect up to send all that information, the REST API, if you have any familiarity with REST calls, are very simplistic. I mean, it's not overly. It's designed to be easy to use. So if you can set those hooks in VS to create those, to make those calls and send test results to Xray, you should be able to do that. We're down to about 1.5 minutes. And I don't see any other questions. I need to put the last slide up here, which is this. So again, this is Michael Lee from Xray. You'll see you can reach me at either michaellee@getxray.app or at sales.get@getxray.app. And today's getting ready to be wrapped up. So I believe we have the closing meeting is coming up after this. But I want to, if you have any other questions, some of these questions I've seen here, I'm going to see if we can get these offline because we'll be happy to answer them. It's just some of these are much longer than can be answered on a call like this. We definitely do have the answers, but they would need a little bit more diagnosis. But I want to thank everybody for your time and for taking a look at Xray.
Sorry, Michael, to interrupt you. Let me just add that we're going to copy all of those questions.
Okay, all those questions, very good.
In our sponsor hub, we'll have the chat there where we're going to answer by written. The written answers will be there. So if you guys have questions that have not been answered, please go to our booth and we will answer there on the chat. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.